Welcome everybody to an evening with the Fuzz. We're going to talk about a deck that I've been playing a little bit on ladder because I've actually found myself enjoying it a little bit and I wanted to cover it, but I'm going to cover it in a slightly different way. So you're looking at this list and you probably think, what is this mess? Like, I just seem to have a little bit of everything. This is not the actual deck list. What I want to provide is a template from which you can build a real deck depending on what you want to go with. So the hero is Keanu, and the idea, of course, is we want to cheat out 3 mana creatures for 2 mana and give him a Might Emblem. So of all the cards I have listed here, the 4-offs are the only ones that I would consider to be core. So let's talk about the core cards first. So Cavalry Field Captain is going to be in every version of Keanu just because of how insane it is. We already know how good it is. Good stats, the extra speed and stats lets you trade favorably, burst extra damage through get over defenders. The card is just irreplaceable. It's too good not to run. The other must-have cards, of course, Dio-Tren is one of the main reasons this deck even exists. Dio-Tren is just absolutely ridiculous value. You're getting, not only, basically are drawing a card, but it's better than just draw a card because you can choose what card you get, including, for instance, Primal Battle, which is one of the main picks, but also cards like Tidal Wave or a few of the 1-drops. And of course, the second part of the effect of getting the Might Emblems is also really good because there's quite a few level 1 creatures in here, and for everyone that you play, getting a free Might Emblem, it's ridiculous. Without Dio-Tren, this deck just wouldn't work. By the way, I should segue into saying this deck is not very new player friendly because it's quite expensive. This is an epic, and the next card, which is core, Mr. Tren, is heroic. So, yeah. I mean, I think this deck could work without Tren. It just wouldn't be very good. Speaking of Tren, this is the other main card. So, if you Keanu him out, on turn 4, he hits the board as a 5/5 unstoppable, and his ability to block spells is extremely good. So, by default, you're blocking level 1 spells, sorry, 1 cost spells, which include stuff like Noxious Fumes, Primal Battle, and Cleanse. But you can easily upgrade him to 2 to block stuff like Fireball, Symbol, New Horizons, Power Discharge, Word of Pain, Consume Spirit. There's just so many things on 2 mana that you're preventing your opponent from playing that it can just shut them down. So Tren is one of your boss monsters. If you get a choice, you almost always want to Keanu him out on turn 3 over anything else, with maybe one exception. I'll cover that later. Really strong card. Has Unstoppable, so he just beats face really hard, and a lot of games will be won because you put this guy on the board and they can't deal with it. And he also is a great platform for the next critical card, which is, of course, Primal Battle. This is really good because in this deck, you're going to have a lot of fairly large creatures, so Primal Battle is basically 1 mana hard removal. I mean, you can't really do better than that. And it's ancient, so if you find yourself low on mana, just use one of these instead. And Dio-Tren can search this back out, which just gives you more value. So, now that we got that out of the way, before continuing on to the other creatures, the only skill shrine I run is the Enchanted Spring. I think it's worth it. There's quite a lot of tricks you can do with this, doubling up on Cavalry Field Captain, doubling up on your Dio-Tren, and if you're running things like Bark Convoy, you can double up on that as well. It's worth it. Now, I did say I was providing a template, so let's look at some of these other cards that you could run in the deck. So you could go with what I call the Shepherd package, which includes 4 copies of Spore Shepherd. And if you're running Spore Shepherd, you're going to want to run Symbol of Growth. These two work extremely well together. Shepherd can put a lot of pressure on the board because, you know, he summons 2 plants. Technically, one of the plants is going to end up eating one of your other creatures. So you could argue he only adds about 4 damage to the board. But the Shooting Sprout's ability to double up on buffs is ridiculous. You have a Sprout survive. 2 symbols for 4 mana will generate 12 damage. That's just insane. And that can win you a lot of games. And of course, there's the added effect of being able to destroy a non-creature card, such as Tomb, such as Grand Reunions, annoying stuff like that. Or just summon an extra Shooting Sprout, which will then benefit from Spore Shepherd. So if you're going to run one, I think you should run the other. Other cards you have to decide on is whether do you want to start with Order or Nature. So if you want to start with order, you're going to be running Sentry of Light. You're going to be running 4 Steel Nor Innkeepers. And then you have a choice of Reincarnation Spirit. It's a nice value card in case you run low. And a 3/3 flying with 3 speed is pretty good. And because it's level 1, it double dips on Dio-Tren. And also a Vanguard is your other choice as a 3/3. On the nature side, you've got Elf Scout and Elf Warrior / Silverfang. These guys are a little bit smaller, but they're faster, which can give you the upper hand. So the only other advantage of green is that you can play Spore Shepherd on turn 3 instead of your Tren with hero power. The only time that's really good is if you actually have an Elf Scout on the board and you can play a Spore Shepherd to just put a lot of pressure on the board immediately. That'll often do better than getting out your Tren. Not always, but if you're starting with order, you're obviously not going to be able to do that because, well, you'll have just played your Innkeeper and you can't play Spore Shepherd right after. Now, what about some other cards? There is an idea that I had in discussing with a few people, specifically Wildblade and Wisp, was to include the Emissary package with Sunblessed, Path, and Namir's Blessing. The idea is that if you get a Tren to come out with your hero power, and then you put Namir's Blessing on it, and some decks just will simply not be able to kill him. Really, the only way to kill him after that, besides just trying to trade with him, but it's a 5/5, is to use Sanctum. Sanctum is one of the problems this deck faces because you can't defend it against it in any way, and if you just get a Tren out, if you try to protect him with a creature and your opponent has enough removal to use with Sanctum, you can just get blown out right then and there. But it's an interesting idea. The Sunblessed Emissary works well with the hero power too. You get it on for 2 mana. It comes out, you can then play a Path or Namir's for free and draw a card. Some of the other cards include Pegasus Regiment, which I'm starting to think isn't a great idea. Originally, it was here to help with control. You know, after you get Cataclysmed, you just play Pegasus Regiment to fill the board, and then Dio-Tren can get it back. But I think another strategy would just be to run Ambushing Sharpshooter, which I actually forgot to put in here, but it's an option, with the idea being of, if you're expecting to get Cataclysmed, you just hero power your Sharpshooter, it comes out as a 3/2 ready to attack, and then you put 2 symbols on it, and that's a 9 damage burst. I mean, or if not symbol, maybe Cavalry Field, maybe Dio-Tren with some buffs. The idea is, rather than trying to survive past a few Cataclysms, you finish them off with a couple Sharpshooters, so you don't ever get to the end game. So that, I think, might be a little bit better. Soul Projection is a possible suggestion to help come back against other mid-range decks, because a lot of the games, especially the mirrors, will just be decided by who gets the better hero power. If your opponent gets a Tren out and you can't get a Tren out, you're going to have problems because they can start Primal Battling anything you play. They decide whether or not Primal Battle is even playable. It won't be playable by default because Tren is blocking it. And for this deck, Primal Battle is your best answer to Tren, but if they have a Tren and you don't, it's really rough. Soul Projection, however, on a card like Tren, can clear the board very quickly. Another combo is with the Shooting Sprout, put a symbol of growth on it, bump it up to 6 or even 8, and then Soul Project your opponent's entire board. So that's another idea in case you want to, fight off against mid-range. So how you build this deck is going to largely depend on what you want to counter. There's a few more cards I'll discuss shortly. So if you want to deal with control, then you would want to run Ambushing Sharpshooter to have that extra burst. If you want to deal with aggro, then another card you could play is the Symbol of Faith, which will act as a combat trick. 1 second. Oh, there we go. There is the Symbol of Faith. It basically acts like a Touch of Light, a little worse because it's not a permanent Might Emblem. But the main thing is it is instant and it gives you a lot of life. So just imagine you get a 5/5 Tren on the board. A Rage Rush deck is going to have a hard time trying to kill Tren, and if they just ignore it, you play Symbol of Faith, smash their face, get 6 life, and that's all she wrote. And you can even get a couple ponies later on. It's not as good as the Regiment, because the most ponies you're realistically going to get with this is maybe 4, if you're really lucky. 4 ponies for 4 mana is pretty good deal, but it's going to be hard. But that's an option. Some of the other cards I didn't mention are Tidal Wave, which is a very nice trick. It's a 1 mana cheap way to just throw an enemy creature back. Some of the annoying cards you might run up against are Wall of the North, which can stop your entire turn, and Tidal Wave just throws it back, and then you can just deal a bunch of damage, trade favorably on the board, etc. Or you can just remove a blocker and then kill the wall. But I think you would not want to run Tidal Wave if you're going to run the Order Start, because then you're going to run 4 Innkeepers, and Innkeeper is going to be the main way you deal with that sort of issues. Just stupefy the wall, and then if they have an electrostatic armor on it, if it's stupefied, you just ignore it, right? Because you don't have to block it anymore. So then you've basically 2-for-1 to your opponent, almost even 3-for-1, because the wall won't be able to block anything other than Tren, and it'll never be able to attack, and the electrostatic armor will never do anything. Pretty good thing. And the only other card, actually 2 other cards, Elvish Champion is always a really, really good card, because, of course, if you can play it with Swift, that's even better. That's another way to push out some damage. You know, in the interest of beating down control, if you have that Sharpshooter come out, if you can play 2 more creatures along with this, that's another burst of damage that's possible to do. So, yeah. And it's just always a good card. If your opponent has 3 creatures, getting either of the play boosts is really good. And, of course, Bark Convoy. If you're not going to run the Shepherd package, you are most definitely going to be running maybe even 4 of these. Because, I mean, with Keanu, it comes up with an extra emblem. So you can destroy 2 spells or artifacts. And that's really good. If you are running the Shepherd package, I think you probably just run 2 of them. You already have 4 symbols. And I don't think you really need more. I mean, that's already 6 ways to deal with spells and artifacts. The only other thing he shines against is, of course, the artifact deck, because Symbol cannot kill artifact creatures. But this can. You know, destroying a Steel Sentient for 1 mana, obviously really good. So that's basically the whole story of the deck. Oh yeah, I even threw in Sharpshooter because I felt bad for not being well prepared. I'm not sure which version is the best, but the idea of the deck is solid. And go out there and try it. If you're going to take it to Conquest, think about what you want to ban. If you're going to ban Control and try to beat down aggro, you're going to want to run Symbol. If you want to beat up Control instead, you want to run Ambushing Sharpshooter and possibly Elvish Champion to have some burst after a Cataclysm. And other than that, the plan is pretty simple. Just control the board at all costs. Trade favorably whenever possible. And yeah, that's the most important priority. Getting good trades and controlling the board comes before everything else. It comes before drawing cards, comes before hero powering. You only really hero power to get that early tempo boost. And after that, actually, the Keanu hero power kind of starts to be less significant. But it's still useful because once you get that board control, you don't even need the hero power. You just control the board and you beat down your opponent. And other than that, go out there and knock some heads. And we'll see which version will survive. Will it be the Order Start, the Nature Start, or perhaps the Emissary package? Who knows? Will it be the anti-aggro, the anti-control? The bottom line is, no matter what you decide to do with it, you can always take this deck and tailor it to be whatever you want. I think just the concept of the deck is really solid. And it's just a matter of tuning it to whatever the meta demands. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this. Maybe this will make it to the database. Maybe somebody will write an article pointing out all the stupid things I missed and just calling me an idiot, which will be a lot of fun, hopefully. And I'll catch you next time.